Hey, welcome into Sports Bit 2.0. Pauly and Teddy, SBR Picks. Monday, March 26th, big game breakdown. NIT Semis. We'll get to that a day early. Two good matchups. And also, we'll get to the Nuggets taking on Philly tonight on the road. A good one. The Sixers won 15-16 at home. We turn the shot clock on as well. Worst beat of the tournament. Teddy's been on the wrong side of a couple with the same. I hate to laugh, but it's the same team twice. Oh, my God. We'll get to all that coming up. And before we get out of here, the play of the day. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. Yesterday, Kansas Duke under 156. It's 72-72 at the end of regulation. Duke leaves a guy wide open from three in a three-point game with 20 seconds. And then Grayson Allen, how does that not stay down? In and out, doesn't stay in, goes to overtime, and it completely changed in overtime once Carter fouled out for the Dukies.
Yeah, it sure was. And that was a bizarre foul call with Wendell Carter. I mean, again, admittedly, I had a ticket on Duke in my pocket, but I'll put it this way. That was no blocking foul. That's the textbook definition of a charge. And they fouled him out. And that was the key to the game. But bottom line, Kansas Duke under 156, right side the whole way. Well, you can rip up that ticket, and then, of course, Duke was not a right side. That was a coin flip game. But end of regulation, Duke's one stop from covering, one made shot away from covering. Didn't happen, and then Malik Newman went nuts in overtime. He was special for Kansas down the stretch. Kid made himself a whole bunch of money with a pretty nice showing in a pretty big game on a pretty big stage at the biggest time of the game, Pauly. Malik Newman came through in a way that Duke didn't.
Yes, great game, and you're right. Duke just needed one stop there to cash the ticket as well. Couldn't get it done. Terrific game. But with all that talent again, Coach K can't even get to the Final Four after losing the second round to South Carolina last year. How about Friday night? Oh, my God. Kansas up, whether you laid 4.5 or 5, they're up 18 with 7 minutes. They're up 11 with 2:30. Why are you fouling? They're up 10 points. They're fouling Clemson. They're turning the ball over. And then Clemson hits a jumper with 5 seconds left to put it on 4. They try to foul, but then the one guy misses. Kansas throws it to the other end of the floor. They dribble it out. For the second game in a row, a vicious beat if you had Kansas.
And that was brutal. I mean, there's literally no other way to describe that particular beat other than a brutal bad beat for Jayhawks backers. They weren't the only ones, though, that took the gas pipe this weekend, man. Texas Tech, Purdue. What about that under, Pauly, where Purdue's fouling down 15? Explain that to me.
I can't. That was a play of the day, supposed to be a winner. Put in a column, right? We've seen, down 15 with 45 seconds. They're fouling, which led to more free throws, and then Purdue came down and got an and one, and they fouled again. Georgia State was down 13 with 30 seconds left against Cincinnati, and then you get the Florida State debacle where they're down 4 with 11 seconds, and they don't foul. I don't know what I'm watching here.
Yeah, well, we saved Florida State for last, because this one, I mean, how do you describe that? Was absolute insanity. There's 11 seconds on the clock. They're down 4. I think that was the most bizarre sequence of the entire tournament. And of course, big time middle and a big time disaster area for a lot of books here in Vegas. Everyone focused on Michigan closing -4, -4.5. Guess what? Wolverines were -3.5 all over the place here in Vegas and offshore on game day. Lands 4. And then the quote from Hamilton when Dana Jacobson's asking the questions after the game, what were you thinking? Incomprehensible, Pauly. Incomprehensible what he said.
Yeah. Did you know he's 69 years old? That plays into this, too. There was a good tweet about, hey, it's past his bedtime, and old people don't like to be questioned. But hey, dummy, Virginia was down 4 with 1 second left, and they won the game. You have a trip to the Final Four on the line, and you think the game's over? Jacobson had to explain the sequence. At one point, Hamilton says to her, how much time was left? What were we down? I mean, he had no idea what was going on. It was crazy. Jay Billis ripped him too, saying you make $3 million a year, do the interview, which is part of the TV contract with CBS. So he came out and apologized, quote, in the minutes immediately following, I was interviewed by Dana Jacobson of CBS. I did not initially respond to her questions as I would have liked. She was doing her job and asking them. The combo of the drama and the raw emotion of athletics and the critical analysis of it makes for compelling TV, but not always for level-headed interviews with the participants who must immediately manage both. I wish I could have done better, end quote. Horrible job. I've never seen that before, Teddy, where one guy kind of tries, he whips, and then the whole team just like, to hell with it, game's over. Against one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the nation, and you started fouling with like 2 minutes left in the game because that was part of the strategy.
I know. Michigan did their best to give that away. They were up 10, right? They were up 10 with 2 minutes to go.
Correct.
And the Wolverines tried to give it away. They missed free throw after free throw after free throw and bad possessions. But the Leonard Hamilton stuff, I mean, the quotes that he actually gave with Jacobson's mic in his face, quote,
yep.
You think that came down to that game? You think that game came down to the final seconds of the game? Yes, Leonard Hamilton, we do think that game came down to the final seconds. When Jacobson asked why the decision was made not to foul, Hamilton said, quote, the game was over. That doesn't bode well. And if, for Florida State to go as far as they did in the tournament and then to go out like that and the bizarre ATS ending there, that was the most bizarre sequence. In a crazy tournament, that was the most bizarre sequence yet.
Yep. You said it early. You said it last week. Florida State was handed the trip to the Sweet 16 because Xavier gave it to him, who was up 11. Of all people coming from that guy, the game's over. They were down 9 with 5 minutes and came back to win. This was tough beat as well. Heat +3, and then the Heat Pacers under, which was 204.5. That was 96-96 at the end of regulation. Pacers get the money, and it goes over in overtime.
Yeah, I mean, just one more chit for all those of you out there who hate betting unders that lose in overtime. We talked about one that lost in overtime in the big dance yesterday. Obviously, got to talk about one in the NBA that lost as well. This was an intense game. I mean, this game mattered to both teams. We've seen so few of them in the NBA that they kind of stand out. But the Pacers still alive to finish as high as the number 3 seed in the East. Miami falls to number 8 with the loss yesterday, the prospect of a first-round matchup against the Raptors. These two teams brawled. The end result is, if you had the Heat, tough beat. If you had the under, brutal beat. Both were right sides. Neither one cashed a winning bet.
That'll be something to watch in the final 2 weeks of the season because the 7 seed will get Boston, and Kyrie could be out. In the 6, you might have to take on Cleveland, although I still think Philly can get there as well. Bad for the Bucks. Spurs-Bucks over 203.5 to 207.5. It fell 209. This was an entertaining game and exploded in the second half. And look at this. This was 3.5 Saturday night because you knew Curry, Durant, and Thompson were out. And then Green didn't play because he had the flu. Went up, it touched 10 here at the South Point in Vegas. Jazz from 3.5 to 9.5, as high as 10. Warriors didn't show anything up early in the first quarter. Then the Jazz got down to business and ran them out, Teddy.
Well, I mean, Golden State, again, we're talking about 4 All-Stars, okay? Not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 of them, okay? When you take the 4 All-Stars off the Warriors, they're a lottery team, like any other team would be if you took their 4 best players away. The market saw it, 3.5, as you mentioned, as high as 10 in some spots, 9.5 to close, and it was no game. A 19-point win for Utah. It was as easy as it gets if you had the Jazz. You watched the third quarter of that game when Utah came out of the break,
it was over.
And it was done. No doubt. Books took a beating on this one, and frankly, they deserved to. That was a bad line they put out with the Warriors, only +3.5, despite the fact that everyone was going to be out.
Yeah, not a good landing spot on the total as well. Likewise, the Atlanta-Houston total, as the under took some action. It was a bad landing spot. Up next, big game breakdown, a good one. They're red hot. The 76ers at home against the Nuggets, who continue their long road trip, and we'll get to the NIT Semifinals coming up on SportsBit 2.0. Betting insight today on SBRpicks.com.
Go to SBRodds.com. Browse, compare, and shop live odds available at top online sportsbooks.
Back on SportsBit, Pauly and Teddy. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Real SportsBit. He's at Teddy_Covers. Thanks to Intertop Sportsbook. 22 years online. Sign up, deposit, and win. Light card tonight in the association. This is on NBA TV. The Sixers at home against the Nuggets. Phillies 5.5, 224.5 the total. They are the 4 seed right now, but they're only a game back in the loss column of Cleveland. After this game, 5 straight against teams with a losing record. Our stats guy, thinks Philly will be favored in every single game the rest of the season, Teddy. And the big thing here, because they've had this easy schedule, they're blowing teams out so they get to sit guys in the second half of these games.
Well, that's the key. I mean, the 76ers very quietly, 15-1 straight up their last 16 home games, 13-3 against the spread in those home games. This team's, just 1.5 games back of Cleveland for the number 3 seed right now. They're looking scary. And when you look at the minutes, again, 12-5 straight up since the All-Star break. But the minutes for everyone is down. Simmons, Covington, Redick, Embiid. Sorry. All those guys. So when you look at the starting lineup that's not being forced to play major minutes, number one, Philly's going to come into the postseason with a little bit more pep in their step than some teams will. And number two, they're getting the playing time for the reserves that they need. Of course, as you mentioned, we have 5 straight against losing teams and then at home against Cleveland for that number 3 spot. And of course, Ben Simmons, what's he have? Triple doubles in 4 of his last 7 ball games. And in the 3 that he missed, he barely missed. One, he only scored 6 points and got double-digit rebounds and assists. Another one, he missed by an assist and 3 rebounds. One, he missed by 2 rebounds. I mean, Ben Simmons is legitimately a triple-double threat every single night right now as a rookie. And you know what? I'd still give Rookie of the Year to Donovan Mitchell anyway.
Oh, come on. That's crazy.
I would.
Go Simmons. Tough stretch here for Denver, trying to survive without Gary Harris. This is the 5th game of a 7-game roadie. After this, they still have the Toronto tomorrow and then OKC to finish. They're trying to get the 8th seed. Unlike Philly, the last 10 games against teams with a winning record, they still have 2 games left against Minnesota. And not having Harris out there is a big blow. Although after they lost to Memphis, they've been a bad road team. Remember, they lost to Memphis, but they went to Washington and won on Friday. Malone on Harris, quote, "It's a very unfortunate. It's killing Gary. Gary lives for these moments. He's a big player to be without." They only played 8 guys in that win against Washington. And if they fall behind early, we see what Malone might do. Do you empty the bench? Do you keep people fresh for Toronto, which is Toronto struggling as well? So that's something to look at and worry about, too, if they're trying to get in there as the 8th seed with what is on deck against a fresh Philly team. And as SBR did a great job looking this up, 73% when Embiid plays covering first quarters this year. 76ers, I think 2 in the first quarter in this one. They've been a money-making machine in the first quarters.
Although that's a trend that was paying great dividends. And now people have caught up with it. The markets have caught up with it. And we haven't seen Philly dominate the first quarters the way they were earlier in the season. But note the difference schedule-wise between these two teams. You're going to see a big disparity in their records down the stretch because, as you mentioned, the Nuggets have 10 straight games close out the season against opponents with winning teams. And Philadelphia, on the other end of the spectrum, they're going to face mostly losers from here on out. Certainly their next 5 all against squads after this with sub-500 records. So you're going to see the Sixers record get better in Denver, maybe not so much. That doesn't mean that Denver's a weaker team than Philly. It means the NBA strength of schedule has dramatic upticks and downticks. The Nuggets right now, they're going to be up against it basically the rest of the way.
All right, very good. Let's do the up next, the NIT. Let's start 4 o'clock Pacific on ESPN. This is Tuesday from the Garden, Western Kentucky against Utah. Pick'em, 139.5 the total. The NIT semis. We have 4 confident teams. All had to win their last game on the road to get here. Western Kentucky, Penn State, and Mississippi State had to win back-to-back road games and won a season for Western Kentucky. Second year with Rick Stansberry. Only 1 returning player on the entire roster. Had to replace 2 assistant coaches. Justin Thomas is a big-time player with 15 points per game and 9 rebounds. But you brought in a ton of transfers. Thompson, who was at Tennessee and Virginia. Colby, who was at Ole Miss and Kansas. Another kid from Buffalo. But they were right there to make the tournament. They blew out Marshall twice, killed them the last time they played, but Marshall got them in the Conference USA title game.
Think about what Rick Stansberry actually did this year. We're talking about 1 returning player on the entire roster, Pauly. Not like in the starting lineup. on the roster. Oh, by the way, and he lost 2 assistant coaches in the offseason. And oh, by the way, it's not like he's got this big network. He's been here for ages. Only his second year on the job. He's coached bigger programs than this one. Many bigger programs than this one. So to see him and see Western Kentucky, and again, the returner was a big-time talent, Justin Thomas. He's a big-time player. 15.5 points, 9.5 rebounds per game. But you talk about the 3 transfers, and from big-time program, kids coming from Virginia and Kansas and even Buffalo, who's winning NCAA tournament games these days. And the 2 Frosh in Hollingsworth and Anderson have both been impact players. So now you're talking about a rare team. 5 different players averaging more than 11 points per game. And you're talking about chemistry that developed over the summer. They had an off-season trip to Costa Rica where they all got playing time. And then, of course, they had that tournament in the Bahamas early on where they played Nova, Purdue, and SMU when SMU was healthy. They went 2-1 in those games. Only lost to Villanova by 8. That gave them the confidence. And, of course, you talked about what happened in the CUSA title game where Western Kentucky, who had rolled Marshall, by 36 points in the 2 regular season meetings, they lost by 1 point in the conference tournament. This is a team on a mission. I have no interest in stepping in front of Western Kentucky, even against a team like Utah.
All right, yeah. Elmore was terrific in that game for Marshall. It was bombs away as they got the win. Kristoviak doing a nice job at Utah. He also rolled the dice with a transfer. Bibbins, who I like, the guard from Long Beach State, averages 14 points per game, shot 44% from 3. Will they have Collette, who just had a kid on Friday, as they had the big win in overtime against St. Mary's? He only played 14 minutes in that game as they gutted it out with the win in overtime on the road. Could be a distraction as he had the kid as well. Kid's keeping you up all night, Ted. You know about that, right? So that's something to look at as well. Check his status coming up tomorrow and see how many minutes he plays and what Kristoviak is, what he says, talking about that as well.
Yeah, sure. First week with the kid. First week, first kid. You can call that a little bit of a distraction, most assuredly.
Yes.
Collette is questionable here, but of course, if he's out of town, it may not matter. If he's in New York City, it may not matter. But he is a question mark here as of this moment. Not sure, A, if he's going to play, B, how effective he's going to be. That's something you want to read your local news sources as you approach tip-off on Tuesday. That being said, even if he plays, I'm not convinced you get A-game David Collette. First couple of days with the baby, you're not sleeping that much either.
All right. Thanks, Standard Tops. Over 4,000 daily wagers. Sign up, deposit, win. Game number 2 from the Garden. Miss State, Penn State. Penn State 2.5. 134.5 the total. Penn State had to win at Notre Dame on St. Patty's Day, no less, and beat Marquette. Now they just played here and beat Ohio State in the Big Ten opener, then lost to Purdue by 8. Garner has already played 5 career games at Madison Square Garden. Quote, "It's a beautiful place, a lot of history in the arena, so you have to naturally get up to play at Madison Square Garden." That's what I do. I love playing there. The lighting is perfect. You can see the rim. It's a good feel. It's the reason why they call it the Mecca. And they did a nice job here, and Chambers done a nice job too. Remember, they went 3-0 against Ohio State, who had a hell of a team.
They did. No question. Of course, they have experience playing in this venue, and they have winning experience playing in this venue, and they have recent winning experience playing in this venue. That's certainly an edge. I don't know how big of an edge it is, but it has to be, can you quantify it? Is that worth a half a point or 2.5 points? I don't know. I think it's worth something. You talk about, and now, of course, all the success for the Nittany Lions has come without Mike Watkins. 3rd in the team in scoring, and the team's leading rebounder, almost 9 boards per game. But what's happened? We got the Frosh. John Harar stepped up with more playing time. He's played really well. Penn State head coach Pat Chambers, quote, "The more minutes Harar's getting, the better he is playing. Just had 9 rebounds in 22 minutes. His defense is outstanding. His ball screen defense is outstanding." So while he's not the same offensive threat as Watkins was, you can get it done on defense and get it done on rebounding in the low post with your Frosh after your main big man gets hurt. It's certainly a big step towards winning an NIT title.
Miss State was hard to figure out. They had a great record in the non-conference, but they played one of the worst schedules. Then they got into conference play in the SEC, and that's when the losses came. They were on the bubble there for a second, and that ended. It's Howland's 3rd year. No seniors in the rotation, so he has something to build and a bright future for Mississippi State. And they were terrific, beating Baylor on the road, and they destroyed Louisville. on the road as well. But look at the shooting. It was unexpected. They shot out of their minds. 3-point shooting before Baylor and Louisville, 31%. The two games there, last two games, 48% shooting the three. Total fluke. See if they can keep it up, though, coming up in this one against Penn State. But the Witherspoon brothers have been terrific as well. But again, that's just crazy, Teddy, random, where you go from 31% to 48%. That was never a game against Louisville on the road. That thing was over in the first quarter.
Well, they smacked him around. But again, you talk about that roll the dice in your favor. You know, you're a 31% three-point shooting team, and you start nailing everything. Back-to-back games where you're draining shot after shot from beyond the arc. Does that carry over to the Garden? I wouldn't count on it. That being said, boy, when I look at Mississippi State, I say this team's gonna be really good next year. No seniors on the squad, no seniors in the rotation, I should say. There's a couple seniors on the squad, but the building blocks are all there. And we talk about an SEC that didn't get a team into the Final Four this year. You look at the state of that conference for the future. With Sexton at Alabama, there's a lot of programs pointed in the right direction. You talk about the Witherspoon brothers. Certainly the Witherspoon brothers, they've been monsters, in Quandary and Nick, about 25 points on 9 rebounds and a bunch of assists between them. But I can understand why Penn State's the chalk in this game. I would only look at the Nittany Lions. I'm not sure if Mississippi State's hot shooting carries over in a matchup where, here's Ben Howland, Rick Stansbury, all the the ex big time coaches getting second and third shots and taking advantage of them in the NIT.
Ben Howland had Kevin Love and Westbrook on the same team, and he wouldn't push the ball. Oh, my God. I can't believe it. Up next, we turn on the shot clock, the worst beat of the tournament so far. It's coming up in the play of the day on SportsBet 2.0, Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Wrapping it up on SportsBet, Betting Insight today, a busy week. Never any downtime, right? Final Four, then we go into the Masters and the NBA and NHL playoffs. And Robbie Vino will be on preview of the baseball season, which is underway this Thursday. So he's terrific on bullpens, win totals. We'll talk to Robbie V coming up. And some big injuries already with Sale and Mad Bum. Turn on the shot clock. Worst bad beat of the tourney. I will start. I had Cincy money line in the second round against Nevada. I also have a friend who had him at 125-1 on a future ticket. You're up 22 with 10:55 left with the number 2 ranked defense. That cannot happen. You cannot blow that lead. It's also a bad beat because how do you lose the game, right? But the whole bracket opened up for him. The 1, the 2, the 3, the 4 were all out. No Kentucky. I mean, all they had to do was get by Loyola and maybe Kansas State to get the Final Four. That's a tough offseason for Cincinnati. They should be in the Final Four, and that was horrible, blowing a 22-point lead with 10:55 left if he had money line like me against Nevada in the second round.
That certainly was a brutal beat. When you're up 22, yeah, you're supposed to win those games, especially when you're the top seed. That being said, it's not even close, Pauly. There were 2 bad beats in this tournament that stand out above all others, and both of them involve the Kansas Jayhawks losing on the last second against the point spread. You can pick whichever of the 2 you want. I don't care. You want the Seton Hall game where Carrington drained 3 threes in the closing seconds? That one was probably worse. But the Clemson game, they dominated that game. The Seton Hall game, they didn't dominate. Clemson, they were dominant and in control and up 14 and up 18 and up 22, and they still didn't cover. Yeah, pick your poison. They were both brutal beats. Either way, Jayhawks backers, yeah, they're puckered up. That were the worst beats of the tournament.
You're right. What had to happen in the Seton Hall game, you're right. I mean, they're up 18 with 7 minutes left against Clemson. But the Seton Hall game, they'd make their free throws, and then Carrington was shooting from almost half court, in between half court and the three-point line. He hit 3 of those. Then he hit a runner in the lane. Seton Hall had to score every time down to cash that ticket. And then Carrington's out on the bench, fouled out, and that kid hits the corner 3 at the buzzer to cash the ticket, to put it on 4. It was nuts. Oh, tough beats. Money time. Play of the day. Let's get back on track, back to the NIT. You teased it earlier. What do you want to do?
Let's take a look at Big Red, Western Kentucky. Pick 'em. That's betting number 777. Look for the Hilltoppers to get past the Utes. I believe in Western Kentucky. And the 5 scorers at 11 points or more, I think, give Utah some problems. We like the Utes. We just don't like them as much. Western Kentucky at a pick-em price is the way we're going to look here on Sportsbet. 777, Big Red gets the job done for the Hilltoppers.
Yeah, lucky number. Should be. Great card tomorrow in the association. We'll look at the Spurs and the Wizards and the Blazers and the Pelicans. Portland's crushing at ATS. The big win last night in OKC. Rob Vino to talk baseball as well. Check it out and follow us on Twitter at RealSportsBet and at Teddy_Covers. Thanks for watching on SBRPicks.com.